Hi, Dateables. Welcome to another episode of the Dateable Podcast. I'm so happy I got to see you this week, Julie. We haven't seen each other in person in so long, and I'm so glad that we both got COVID, got over it, and we got to see each other in real life.
It's been forever. I was trying to remember the last time we actually saw each other. It feels like I see you all the time because I'm talking to you 24/7 basically and seeing you on video all the time. But it is wild that it's been so long.
Well,
but
the
I'm
last
glad
time
that
I saw you, I couldn't talk.
Yes, and then there was a time in between that we were supposed to get together and do a double date, but you had like an emergency last minute. Do you remember that? You were supposed to come over. So I finally did our long-awaited double date.
And we had the most lavish meal, y'all. It was so beautiful. We went to this new sushi restaurant that Julie and her partner have been to already, and it was such a treat. All four of us could share that meal together. It was so decadent. Like the first thing we got
so decadent.
was toro and
tartar. Yeah.
Toro tartar and caviar and uni.
Yeah.
That was the first thing we got. I am still dreaming about that.
Oh my God. I know Yue loves sushi. Like when I think of someone that loves sushi, you're who comes to mind. So as soon as I was eating that the first time, I'm like, I gotta take Yue next time she's in town.
I guess we should give them a shout out, right? Sushi Sato?
Yeah. Sato, tomato, tomato. Who knows?
Tomato. But what is so wild is that when we were at the restaurant, we ran into someone I knew who is part of the restaurant group that started it. And he was telling us there were two other restaurants hidden within that one restaurant. It was so weird. It was like 3 for 1.
Well, what I love about running into people in San Francisco is there's always like 3 degrees. It's like always. I feel like it's less than 6 degrees. Like the 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon, it's usually like 2 to 3 degrees. And he knew I would say probably 4 people that were connected to this podcast somehow.
Yes.
In one way or the other, whether they were a guest or
yeah, one of which we no longer speak to or about. We'll leave it at that.
Yes, it has been a week. That's for damn sure. I mean, the highlight, of course, was seeing you. Low light is all the shit that's going on right now with abortions. And probably like by the time we air this, who knows? We're always a couple days ahead. Who knows if a decision will actually be made? But I feel like it's just been, I don't know. This whole week I've just been not feeling good. And I think a lot of it comes back to that because it's just a direct hit on women's bodies, women's rights, like all the stuff. And, we're talking about taming our inner critic today. Body image is a big component. And it makes me really like think about it too, that, like the relationship with our bodies is so important to our overall relationship happiness with ourselves and with others too.
It's just so disappointing to think about how backwards our country has become.
Yeah.
We're taking like 30 steps back for some reason. And yet we're so woke in other areas. It just doesn't make any sense. This internal push-pull, that's what's driving people crazy. I was just reading about how people are encouraging women to delete their period tracker apps because that data doesn't fall into HIPAA. So these apps can actually release your data and track your sexual activity as much as they want. We're losing our freedom and also just our choices. No matter what your own opinion is about abortion, you cannot make that decision for a woman. You cannot make that decision for someone else. You can only make that decision for yourself.
The government has no right, in my opinion, to be intertwined with our bodies at all. I don't know. I'm just so frustrated because I feel like I definitely identify more liberal, but I'm also like frustrated by far left too.
Oh my God. Yes.
I feel like, I mean, this is maybe more relevant to SF folks, but I feel like this is nationwide too. And, I'm not going to go on too much of a politics rant because this is a dating podcast, but I do believe like the relationships in our community and our life, like all that go back to the relationships that we have with others and how we're showing up. So I do think it's all interconnected in some way. But in San Francisco, there's a huge recall that's happening with Chesa Boudin. I think it's
Hate that
Boudin,
fucker.
actually.
Is it Boudin? I just call him
I looked
Boudin.
it up. I know.
Bougie.
I feel like I was calling him Boudin, but then I
He
looked up his
sucks.
pronunciation. He sucks. I feel like he's gone so far left of just like any criminal activity is like fair game. Like he doesn't want to prosecute anyone. So,
No.
it's an embarrassment. Like it's just made the city super unsafe, and I know crime's up in general, but I feel like the recall, like I'm glad that we have at least, I'm not like for recalls. Like I think generally they're a waste of time, but I'm glad that we can voice our opinions. I wish we could voice our opinions with all the abortion stuff. The fact that like that's just sitting with someone else's control is really disheartening. But I do encourage people to like vote, like I think that is a right that we all have. And personally, do you remember, Yue, we stumbled upon
Yes, we
his
did.
election party, like when he got
Yes.
elected. And I remember our friend at the time was there, and he's
Hated
like,
him.
this is bad. He's like, this is really bad for SF. And I was ignorant at the time and did not vote. I was like, oh, this doesn't really affect me, and I think it's so easy to do that. So, like, hopefully people can, take that vote if they want to. But that's just something that's also on my mind. I feel like each direction's fucked, basically.
Well, I think we can relate this back to dating, which is a lot of times we forget we're sharing the same goals. So therefore, all
Yeah.
we're trying to do is just prove that we're right. I mean, I feel like politicians get into office just to prove they're right. They're not
Yes.
thinking about your interests, and they just want to, they just want to be right. And I think in dating sometimes too, we're just trying to win. We're trying to be right, but we forget the common goal is we're trying to improve humanity, right? Especially with dating.
Exactly.
And that's why we create this friction in dating and in politics, because we feel like our purpose is to prove our point versus like being curious and having a mutual interest at heart. And I think that's something that we've forgotten.
Yeah, well, I was reading these articles about how Boudin, however you pronounce his name, was using like San Francisco not because he like genuinely wanted to make it a better place, but like a testing ground. And a lot of his policies come from his own upbringing, and I feel like that's kind of dangerous personally. But I've also heard from sources that I will not name what is the whole like police department in San Francisco is completely discouraged and dismantled. And I've also heard on a dating front that he's a total fuckboy from someone that dated him before he became a big shot. So for nothing else, vote recall because he's a fuckboy.
It's so
Recall
terrible.
fuckboys. Yeah.
Recall fuckboys. That should be our next campaign. Recall
Yes.
fuckboys.
Recall
Yeah,
fuckboys.
sad. It's been a sad week to think about that. And, talking about abortions and thinking back to the times I was in college, I knew many friends who had abortions or had pregnancy scares, and I can't imagine what their life would be like today if they didn't have that option or if it was illegal to do so. This is not China. I don't want this to be China again. This is stuff like people were trying to escape from their countries, and I really hope we don't become that country.
Yeah, well, I think women have just made so much progress. And I read a quote somewhere that it's not just, the body obviously is one big part of this, but it's also the financial freedom that comes with it. Because you're right, if you can't get an abortion and now you're raising a child when you're 17, like that's going to mess up your whole trajectory if you're not ready. And is it really fair to the child, right? There's like another whole side of it is it's like pro-life versus pro-birth is another debate. Like, are you really giving this person the best life that they could if you aren't fit to be a parent and ready?
Yeah, I've certainly met some parents who probably shouldn't have kids.
But was that by choice? Or was
Ooh, I don't know about this one, but
yeah.
anyway,
we're going down the body topic this week, so it is very in line with what this whole episode is about. We have a really great body positivity influencer, Katie Storino. We were on her podcast, and as soon as we did her podcast, we said to each other, we need to get her back because she just like has this, I love it. It's just like a no bullshit attitude. I really appreciate that.
Her podcast is called Boob Sweat.
Oh yeah, her podcast, Boob Sweat. Best name ever.
So fitting. This is just a conversation I think everyone can relate to, men and women and everybody from all walks of life, because we've all had those moments and still those moments of just discouraged by our own bodies, not liking what we see, having that negative self-talk and not knowing how to get out of it. And then the media, society, your own network, they're not helping either, because we just kind of perpetuate the negative body talk that we have. So she's someone who survived the negative body talk. She's still dealing with it on a daily basis, but she's able to really flourish out of it. So this is such a great talk just to hear from the other side of someone who really overcame this.
Had an episode a while back, body image and dating, with Erin. We also did one, Everybody Beautiful, with Natalie a while back.
Oh,
so this has been a topic we've hit a few times, but this is, I feel like, a different perspective, which, you know, there's always going to be many perspectives. But what I like about this is it goes deeper than just body too, of all negative self-talk, because I think we all face this. This is something that is in all of our heads as we're dating. And, you know, I feel like it shows up extra hard when you're dating, because dating is ultimately a reflection of you, or the way that we interpret dating, whether it is or isn't. Really what dating is a way to find connection. But I feel like people use it as validation that there's something right or something wrong, depending on how many dates they get or how far a relationship progresses. So it can feel very like personal, and our inner critic loves to come out when it gets personal. So this episode, we definitely go into it all. And Katie posed one question that has stuck with me the last couple of weeks of, why did I have to do the work? And I think that's something to think about, like, as we're listening to this episode, because I feel like a lot of times we all feel like, why do I have to do all this? Like, why do I have to go through this, like, innermost term, like my inner self and reflection mode and all that? Like, why can't I just skip to the end?
Well, isn't that the truth for dating too? It's like, why can't you just skip to the end, get into that relationship? Yeah, I think doing the work is so important, but also we as a collective need to do the work too. It's not on, it's the onus isn't just on an individual person. We all need to reframe the way we think about body image. And something that really stuck out to me was someone, kind of like an acquaintance, was pregnant a few years ago, and I made a comment about her body saying, "Oh my gosh, I couldn't even tell you were pregnant. It just looks like you ate a burrito." And she took it to social media, was like, another woman commented about my body, and my body is not for her to comment. Whether I'm small or big or whatever, it's not her right to comment about my body. And I mean, I learned my lesson. I apologize, but
yeah,
I think sometimes at least for me, I just get so comfortable with someone. I feel like I can say these things. Also, coming from a Chinese culture, that's the first thing you always say to someone. You always say something about their body, whether they got taller, smaller, shorter, fatter, skinnier, whatever, or darker. You always want to make that comment. It's just part of our cultural upbringing. And I'm trying to undo all of that and know that someone else's body is not for me to comment on.
I feel like as a Jewish upbringing, I had the same situation. Like,
really?
every time it'd be like, "Oh, you got skinnier, you got fatter." Like, there was always a comment about it. And I also had kind of that reality check when we did our last body image episode. I remember I made a comment in our Facebook group, Love in the Time of Corona, around, like, you know, being rail thin. And one of our members, you know, called me in, which I appreciated. I'll give her a shout out, Lori. I remember her saying, like, this is just as offensive as someone, you know, saying that someone's bigger. And I think for me, like, I've always struggled with weight and, you know, being like always wanting to be thinner, right? So I think I viewed it as my own bias coming in, that people that are thin have it easy, and, you know, that they don't have body struggles, which is totally false, is what I learned from that.
Right. Yeah. Well, that's why we need this conversation. And I hope we have more conversations like this.
God, yeah. And I feel like the list of things that we can beat ourselves up with goes so much even further than body image. I feel like so often we talk about this too on dates. A lot of times you're thinking about like, how am I showing up? And, you know, almost like self-critiquing. But that is kind of the opposite of connection ultimately. Like if you're sitting there just thinking about yourself, how are you connecting to this other person? But it's so easy because you want to present well and you want to make a good impression.
Exactly.
But, yeah.
Yeah. Let's do it.
Let's get into it. But before we do, a few announcements. Definitely share this one with a friend. This is, I think everyone needs this. Regardless of what you're going through, you will relate. Like we said, everyone has something that they think is getting in their way with dating and just, you know, how they show up in general. So share this with a friend who will benefit from it. And other announcement, follow us on Instagram at Dateable Podcast. That's where we put up clips. We'll be putting up a clip from this episode. You get to see our guests. You get to see us. You know, or you can go to YouTube also. Or TikTok. We're trying to grow TikTok. We don't have much of a following at TikTok, but we would love to have a following at TikTok.
Another announcement is my partner and I really like Julie's partner. It's an important announcement to make. He's a very cool guy. You know, sometimes when you meet your friends' partners, you kind of have to just be nice and maybe the conversation doesn't flow. I think with your partner, it just felt so comfortable and so easy to talk to him. He's so social. I like that. I like someone who's just like easygoing and social.
Well, you met him before, but you were just like not in a good place then.
I mean, I liked him then, but at the same time, I was struggling to talk and breathe. So
go back to like, I'm thinking about myself right now because I can't even focus on.
There were other priorities, just trying to stay alive. But
that is always great to hear. I mean, obviously, I like your partner too, but I've met him many of times. So.
Yeah. So yes, you got the UA seal of approval.
He will be so happy to hear that.
He can put that on his resume.
He's like, is UA gonna grill me like last time? Because UA like pulled up her phone asking questions because she could not speak.
Yeah, I was typing questions on my phone for him the first time I met him, and I had some questions in mind. But this time I was like, you know what? It's been over a year. There's no point in grilling.
It's a little late
for grilling. So we'll just eat some good food.
Yep.